This is a live look at the scene at Clearview Heights and Trethewey Drive near Eglinton and Keele tonight, where police are investigating after 5 people were shot this evening, all of them teenagers. 2 girls and 3 boys, ranging between the ages of 16 to 18. Paramedics took 4 of the patients to hospital. Another person later showed up at hospital with gunshot wounds confirmed to be connected to the same scene. Police telling us the victims' injuries range from being serious to life-threatening. Now, here's what we know what happened at this hour. Police say the 5 victims were in the hallway of an apartment complex when 3 suspects entered the building through a side door and 2 of them opened fire. The suspects then fled in a vehicle, a dark sedan. They went eastbound on Clearview Heights towards Trethewey. Now, Police Chief Mark Saunders was on the scene tonight. He described the suspects as being male in their late teens to early 20s, and they were wearing dark colored clothing and hoodies. He said this is a targeted shooting, but the police will find the suspects.
We have lots of resources here. We've got the PSRT, we've got uniform presence, the forensic identification services are here. We've got our specialized teams that investigate shootings that are here, specialized in street gang activity. And with all of those efforts and resources, I think we've got a shot at solving this. We're just that one phone call away from people that would definitely know. I think it'll be hard to keep this one a secret. I really do.
Now, police remain on the scene this hour. The police chief saying upwards of 20 rounds were fired. We'll bring you any updates to this story as we get them. And some other stories we are following. A man is dead after he was struck by a car in Scarborough. Now, that man just one of 3 pedestrians struck and seriously injured in the city's East End tonight. Police were called to the scene near Lawrence and Birchmount on Howden Road, just outside of a collision reporting center. Around 8:15 tonight, officers performed CPR on the man before he was taken to hospital, but he did die of his injuries. The driver of the vehicle that hit him remained at the scene. And a woman was struck just minutes earlier at McNichol Avenue and McCowan Road. She was taken to hospital with serious head injuries. And in the third collision, a pedestrian was struck on Ellesmere Road and Orton Park Road just after 9 o'clock. They were also taken to hospital with serious injuries. Now, not far from where the 5 people were shot tonight, police continue to investigate another shooting, this one taking place just after midnight near Weston Road and Lawrence. Police say 2 shooters walked up to a home and just started firing. 2 people remain in hospital tonight with gunshot wounds, and as Greg Ross tells us, it's not even clear if they were the intended targets of the bullets.
It's appalling.
That was Nancy Ampa's reaction after waking up with her young daughter this morning to the sound of gunshots. It happened in this quiet neighborhood near Weston Road and Lawrence Avenue, where Ampa says she has lived for more than 20 years.
Like, you don't wake up, it's supposed to be a safe street. I've lived here all my life. And to have kids around and hearing this is crazy. This is madness.
At least 8 shots were fired into this house just steps away from where Ampa lives. 2 people inside suffered gunshot wounds, a 44-year-old woman and a 71-year-old man.
But by all accounts, it does appear to be targeted. Is hard to say with certainty. Of course, further investigation will be required to see whether or not it was in fact targeted.
But police can't say if the man and woman were the intended targets or if it was somebody else in the house. Neighbors tell us that there are multiple people renting rooms in the home.
It is quite concerning that someone fired shots into a home without knowing exactly who was in the home.
We spoke to a woman who lives in a ground floor apartment with her daughter just inside this door. She didn't want to appear on camera out of fear for her safety, but she did show us the bullet holes inside her home.
I heard like it shots one rapidly, one after the other. I heard the shots and then I stayed in my room for around 25 minutes until everything settled.
This man lives on the upper level of the house.
I never see nothing, but I just hear about 3 or 4 shots go off.
Both of the victims in this shooting were taken to hospital with serious injuries. The woman's injuries were originally considered to be life-threatening. She has since been upgraded to serious but stable condition. The victims, we're told, ran in the direction of Weston Road after the shooting. Police are currently in the process of reviewing surveillance video from this neighborhood. There are several homes here that do have cameras that would have picked up something from that shooting early this morning. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
And further west in Georgetown, someone shot a 36-year-old man, killing him in his driveway last night. Police say it happened around 11 o'clock. They believe it was also a targeted shooting and that there's no further risk to public. The victim, described as 36-year-old Ryan Lord. Police in the neighborhood are still shaken, though, tonight. One man says he heard as many as 10 gunshots.
I was thinking it was fireworks, but it sounded too loud and like too fast. So then I knew right away it was gunshots. I just moved into this place and like I have 2 kids, and 2 doors down somebody just got shot.
Now, Halton police urging anyone with information or surveillance video to get in touch with investigators or to leave an anonymous tip with Crime Stoppers. Well, major changes could be coming to Ontario's autism services. That's if the province takes on a panel's recommendations of sweeping changes to improve the system.
This is a complex issue, and I think when you have those 20 people from all walks of life around that table, you're going to get all kinds of perspectives and points of view, and they came together to agree on this report and these recommendations, and they will be the basis of our Ontario Autism program going forward.
Now, the changes would allow for easier access to services. They would also provide families with more support and widen the treatment options for children with autism. This all comes after an uproar over a revamp to the program announced in February. The province created that 20-person advisory review panel after admitting the initial changes weren't working.
Minister Todd Smith was very proud and very open with us and gave us full range to help him create this truly individually needs-based program. And he gave us free range to literally rebuild a program, and we did that with confidence and with emotion and with blood, sweat, and tears.
The government says it will review the report with and aims to have the changes in place by April 2020, although some of the recommendations could be implemented much earlier. But another report at Queen's Park today is painting a grim picture of Ontario's long-term care system. The province's financial watchdog says the wait list for beds is growing and will peak at over 40,000 people next year. As Lisa Shing tells us, the government's existing commitments for new beds will barely put a dent in that problem.
The wait list for a long-term care bed will continue to rise.
A sobering look at Ontario's long-term care crunch by Ontario's Financial Accountability Office. It reviewed the province's promise to create 15,000 new long-term care spaces over 5 years. It found Ontario's wait list for beds will peak in the next couple of years, despite that promise.
It is what it is, right? I guess that's the role of this office is to paint the picture, bleak or otherwise.
And even if those 15,000 beds get built, the province would need to add 55,000 more just to maintain the ballooning wait list.
So why is there such a crunch? The report says the aging population is growing at a much faster rate than long-term care beds are being added to the system, and the government is blaming that on the Liberals.
We look back on 15 years of Liberal neglect in the long-term care sector, 15 years of runway that we would have been able to develop the beds and make that capacity.
In the mid-2000s, they added 10,000, but the number of new beds didn't increase by much in the last few years of Liberal rule.
I reject the notion that we did nothing. We did a lot. And was it enough? No. Do we need to do more? Yes.
The solution is not to cut hospital funding, which is what the Conservatives are doing.
The government says it's finding ways for seniors to receive care at home. The FAO report indicates the shortage is adding to the stress on Ontario hospitals. It found many patients are only there because they're waiting for a long-term care space to open up. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Public elementary teachers in Toronto and York Region casting their ballots tonight over whether or not to strike.
We believe strongly together in publicly funded public education and in a government that agrees that that's important, that there be no erosion to our world-class education system. We're here to express how much that means to us, and we need to draw a line in the sand.
The Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario has been holding strike votes across the province since the end of September. This while the union is in contract negotiations with the province. Now, the overall strike vote results will be released in November. If teachers vote in favor of job action, though, it doesn't mean a strike would happen right away. The union says it's all part of a larger process. Colin Kennedy's here with a first look at the forecast, and it's not a good sign when Halloween comes with a special weather statement.
No, it generally is not, Mike, and this is one of those cases, and for some of us, we can remember many years trick-or-treating where you had to modify the costume, an extra coat, boots, umbrella. Well, this is one of those years where you need to kind of do something to keep dry. So we do have a special weather statement. So for the rain, it actually intensifies as we go into tomorrow, into Halloween, coming in some waves. All told, by the time it ends overnight Thursday towards Friday morning, 30 to 50 millimeters. That's the potential there. The wind's very strong as well, but not until likely after the trick-or-treat hours, so after midnight on Thursday towards Friday morning. But you'll want to bring in any decorations then after those trick-or-treat hours. So here are some of the waves, and you see when we get into the darker greens and then yellows and oranges, that's the heavier stuff. So tomorrow morning, a bit of a break for the GTA, not necessarily elsewhere in the province, and then some breaks throughout the day, but primarily it is a wet day that we'll be seeing. And on the backside of this, there's going to be a little bit of light snow. Now, there could be accumulations to the north of us, but even some flurries possible Friday morning coming right through the city. So that risk is there before things clear out and before those winds, they will die down later in the day Friday. Overnight tonight, nearly steady with our temperatures, and then 14 tomorrow as those winds change towards the southwest eventually, but much of the day it is going to feel a lot cooler than that. We're going to look at the accumulations, look at the winds, and take a little bit of a closer look at all of this coming up, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
A fundraiser held tonight for a group called True Patriot Love. It helps support Canadian military families, and tonight's event in particular paying tribute to women who have served and died for our country. Talia Ricci was there.
In 2019, women play an important role in the military. In combat, as leaders and members, some of them have witnessed change.
We've come a long way from when I joined in terms of sexism, prejudice, discrimination and that sort of thing. We've really come a long way. We've still got our work cut out for us, of course.
And that's why there's events like this. A reception to pay tribute to females in the Canadian Armed Forces and the chance to hear their stories.
It's really important to draw attention to the challenges that they face and then make the resources available for them.
Lieutenant Commander Catherine Logan sat alongside other women on a panel this evening to talk about their experiences.
I think for women in particular, lots of times our injuries aren't as visible, so women can be they're a higher likelihood to be victims of military sexual violence, or maybe just other injuries that don't go as seen.
Captain Nicola Goddard was also on the minds of those in attendance tonight.
She was the very first Canadian female to have died in a combat role, and so her death really marked for Canada, I think, a turning point and realization that women are doing everything out there.
She herself personified all of the things we're here tonight to celebrate and recognize.
The event raising funds for the foundation named in her honor.
Our fund specifically funds critical programs and services that support female serving members, veterans, and their families all across Canada.
These women also hoping to inspire others to consider a career they've loved.
I believe the career path chose me.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
It is a custody battle over Greek gods. Well, statues of Greek gods, at least. Right now, they're sitting on private land on the exhibition grounds after the break, when Hercules, Hydra, and some others could soon be headed back to their rightful home. Flu season is just around the corner, and the Ontario government is launching a new campaign urging people to get their flu shot.
I think it's important to note that 5,000 people get hospitalized every year as a result of the flu, but people also die because of the flu. And even if you're not concerned about getting the flu yourself, for the protection of other people, for your friends, your family members, your neighbors, please consider getting the flu shot. It's really, really important.
The province-wide campaign will run for the next 13 weeks. This flu strain this year was expected to be especially brutal, but experts now say it'll just be a typical virus. It does take 2 weeks, though, for the shot to reach its maximum level of protection, so the minister is urging people to get it as soon as possible. A years-long standoff over a set of sculptures on the exhibition grounds may be drawing to a close. Toronto's Garden of the Greek Gods has been hidden behind fencing for 5 years, drawing criticism from the public and the sculptor's daughter. But as Farah Morali tells us, there is new hope the gods will reappear soon.
It's been described as artist E.B. Cox's tour de force. The Garden of the Greek Gods was installed back in 1979. Cox carved 20 sculptures using an air hammer and chisels on massive blocks of limestone. This is what the gods look like today, trapped behind fencing and hardly visible on the exhibition grounds. They've been like this for 5 years now.
My father would be flipping over in his grave right now.
Kathy Sutton is the daughter of E.B. Cox. She says her father meant for the art to be accessible to the public.
It's not right that this public art should not be climbed on by children, which is what it was. One of the biggest intentions of my father was to allow children to climb the art and enjoy it and learn about Greek mythology.
So why are the gods behind fences? Well, to understand that, we need to go back more than a decade. In 2004, the city leased this land to the owners of the Toronto Events Centre, formerly known as Music Nightclub. Mistakenly included in that lease were the statues, and so while technically the city still owned them, they were on the nightclub's land. In 2014, the nightclub decided that they want to install a series of swimming pools which required fencing, and which is why the statues look like this.
Over the years, the calls for the city to act grew louder. With accusations, the statues were being held as a bargaining chip for a lease extension. All the while, they remained behind fencing.
I think we're at that point right now where they are. We're in agreement that they're going to be moved to the public.
Now, nearly 5 years later, it seems the city and the owner of the club are working together to move them. The fate of the gods was discussed at a meeting of the Exhibition Place Board of Governors late last week. Stakeholders told CBC Toronto they're close to a deal.
I think we're within a few months. Fingers crossed.
I think emotions run deep on this. And there's a lot of strong viewpoints on where those statues belong. And I'm just glad that it's heading towards the right place, a resolution to all of this.
The hope is by next summer, these statues will be publicly accessible just south of where they're hidden now, a location that's seen as fitting for the gods. Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
Oh, fault twist, but this is Benazet! TFC on level!
Big game for the Toronto FC, playing in the Eastern Conference Final in the MLS playoffs tonight. We'll tell you if Toronto's headed to the finals after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Toronto FC facing Atlanta United in the Eastern Conference Finals tonight. A battle between the last two teams to win the MLS Cup. Lots of action early on. United takes an early lead here. Gonzalez Martinez sets up Julian Gressel for the easy tap in. But Toronto would tie it in the 12th minute. Nicholas Benezet unleashes, watches a curling strike, bends it right in. That ties the game. Let's jump to the 78th minute. Game still tied. Nick DeLeon has ball well outside the area. He turns, unleashes a strike, top corner, his 10th goal all season. What a goal. It makes it 2-1. Toronto FC holds on for the win for a trip to their third MLS Cup appearance in the last 4 years. They'll face Seattle November 10th, a rematch of the 2016 championships. And the Raptors hosting former coach Dwayne Casey and the Detroit Pistons tonight. Cal Lowry pushing the ball up the floor. Nice bounce pass to Pascal Siakam for the throwdown. Toronto up by 6 at the break. Third quarter, Fred VanVleet's pass to Siakam is a little off the mark, but he's able to track it down, lays it in right off the bounce. Siakam with 19 points in the quarter. And being swept by the Pistons last regular season, the Raptors earned their first victory over their former coach by a score of 125-113. And Colin Kennedy's back with her extended forecast. A bit of a ghoulish Halloween forecast. Rain and wind and a possibility of snow on Friday?
Yeah, there's a lot of adjectives. You're right there. It is scary what we're looking at in terms of what's coming in here for the next, say, 36, even getting close towards 48 hours. So a special weather statement I was showing earlier in the show because of the rainfall amounts going towards 30 to 50 millimeters. The winds also will be kicking up, especially Friday morning. So keep in mind some of the heaviest winds or strongest winds we'll see then. Some of the heavier bands of rain overnight tonight and through the day on Halloween. Now a break tomorrow morning, perhaps that potential around the GTA, just a bit of a break in the precipitation, but heavier amounts coming through southwestern Ontario, and those will ride right back through the GTA and across the shores of Lake Ontario up into cottage country. Different scenario with colder air filtering in. By the time we get overnight Thursday towards Friday morning, some areas will see accumulating snow, and some of those flurries by Friday morning could make their way down into the city as well. But just letting you know, those trick-or-treat hours, there may be a little bit of a break in terms of the precipitation getting lighter, just more like drizzle, but it's really going to be wet conditions that we'll be seeing. As we go towards later in the day Friday, we'll get into a bit of a clearing trend and the sun will come back for a little while there, but we'll see some much cooler air in place too. So just looking at the rainfall up until we get to near trick-or-treating time tomorrow, and then when we add into that what happens then as you go towards later Thursday and towards Friday morning when it will be winding down, and that's why you see some areas getting there closer to that 30-40 millimeters, Windsor towards 30 millimeters, and even Kitchener and towards Toronto, we're looking at being in that kind of corridor there. The winds, in terms of how strong they will be, some of the strongest winds again come in. They really ramp up after midnight on Thursday. So after the kids are back in, you want to get all of those decorations back in as well, or if you still have the cushions out for your outdoor furniture, all of that needs to come in because Friday morning, here's what we're looking at. Some of those winds will exceed 70 kilometers an hour. We're looking at 75. You can see all the way from Oshawa through Hamilton, Toronto, and St. Catharines region as well. So all of that will start to ease up later on the day on Friday and begin to improve. But your temperatures right around those hours of about 7 to 9, 7 to 8 degrees we're looking at with some breezy conditions, not terribly strong. And then there's that much cooler air. So that's why flurries possible early on Friday and into the weekend. Hey, let's end on a positive note here, Mike.
Okay.
We get an extra hour of sleep on the weekend.
And with temperatures that low, we'll want to stay inside.
Yeah, cuddle up, cozy up in bed. That's right.
Thanks a lot, Colette.
You're welcome.
Halloween is tomorrow night, and if you can't decide on a costume, you might find this next video inspiring. A little paint and some powder and lipstick and a lot of style, not to mention some imagination. And a firm hand on the tools, a Manitoba makeup artist, Maddie Kennedy, creates these creepy looks and posts them to social media. If you're brave, you can copy her ideas. If you're bold, you can create some of your own. Of course, you need her talent to pull some of these off as well. Just make sure you use waterproof makeup for tomorrow. Now, Talia Ricci is here tomorrow night. I'm actually off. I'm going to be taking my daughter trick-or-treating in the rain. Please stay safe on the roads. Good night.